get started. I'm Cindy Campbell of Cindy Campbell Dog Training, and you're Penny Beeman of Yooper's Paws. I'm in California, not where there's a fire right now, but we started this because there's just not as much opportunity for handlers to talk about what's going on and issues that are pertinent to service dogs more so than to pets. So what we do ask is that when we're talking, that you stay muted. If you have a question, we want you to either raise your hand or there's an emoji under the reactions of a hand raising up. And what that does is it moves your screen to the top left corner and puts a hand on there, so we know that you want to ask a question. We want to keep things relevant to the conversation as much as possible, but we also know that we do tend to go off topic a little bit. So are you ready, Penny?
Yeah, I just had to get after Azul again. He's digging out more food. That's what I get for having snuffle boxes out. So tonight's topic is one of transportation troubles, which can really be a whole big thing. The big place we're going to start is usually common to personal vehicles, but it can apply to public transportation as well. And so there's some common struggles that we hear over and over again as dog trainers, being motion sickness, the dog exhibits anxiety or fear in the car, or the dog is overexcited. And so those are kind of the three that we're going to start with. And a lot of times they do tend to go hand in hand. So motion sickness in itself can actually be a physical issue. Most puppies will go through a stage of motion sickness somewhere around 3 to 4 months old. And that's where vets will typically advise they'll probably grow out of it. If your dog is going through motion sickness older than that, then it's probably a good time to talk to your vet about other things that may be causing it. The other thing is, if your dog is fearful of the car ride or has anxiety about where you might be going, or even if they're overexcited, that can cause motion sickness even in an older dog. So sometimes in order to treat the motion sickness, you have to kind of look for that underlying reason behind it, whether it's health related or whether it's emotionally driven, like fear or anxiety would be, or even overexcitement is emotionally driven. So if a dog's struggling with motion sickness, they're likely having an upset stomach to the point of bodily functions are no longer under control. So they might be puking, they might have potty accidents, they might have an extra lot of drool. You know, some breeds are more prone to drooling, but they might be drooling more than normal for themselves. They might also have some extra heavy panting that's not heat related. So there's a lot of different symptoms that go along with motion sickness. So unless it's a specific health related reason that's causing it, which, you know, there could be a whole bunch of those, and we are not vets, we're dog trainers. So we look more at the emotional experience that could cause motion sickness. And probably the most common one that we hear is an anxiety or fear-based one, which could play into why puppies around 3 to 4 months old struggle with this. My dog is going to shred a cardboard box behind me. A little bit distracting, so I apologize for that. But so anxiety or fear-based is one of the most common issues we hear and see for motion sickness. And this could be just because a puppy wasn't socialized or desensitized to the car at a young age. but it also could come at an older age for a dog that had a traumatic experience in the car. Maybe they were fine in the car for 4 years, and then you were just in a minor or a major car accident, and now they have a little bit of fear and kind of some fall back on that whatever exciting thing happened or scary thing happened, and so you have to work through them. There is also, um, if you know anything about dog emotions, you've probably heard the bucket analogy before. And so you know that if your dog is stressed out, their bucket is slowly getting fuller, fuller, fuller. And some dogs only have a motion sickness or car sickness issue when their bucket is already overflowing. So sometimes just only working on car trips when their bucket is empty or at a low key can actually really help you make progress there. So we want to go over just a couple of easy steps when it comes to desensitizing to the car, because that is kind of your first reaction that you can do to help. And whether it's a young puppy or an older dog, the steps are pretty much the same. So basically, every puppy or every dog is going to be a little bit different is the speed that they walk through the steps. But the key is breaking it down in small enough increments for that particular dog to be successful. So I have a client right now that has a 4.5-month-old puppy. And so she was struggling with this. The puppy just came home 5 days ago. And of course, that caused some motion sickness, being the first time the dog was ever in the car. But now she has to counteract that, being that the puppy was probably in a fear stage on its day home as well, plus having that issue of losing control of bodily functions in the car on the drive home. And so now the puppy has to have some really slow desensitization to get them to love the car before just throwing them in the car and going for a ride. So she has a couple of different games that she's going to be playing. One of them is kind of unique to her in that it fits in their environment, because she's also trying to build up hype for the dog to interact with her, because this puppy has to this date mostly interacted with other puppies and dogs and not had a whole lot of human interaction. So in trying to teach the dog to find value in playing with her as the handler, they're playing a chase game, which they can also play in their driveway. They have a secured driveway where one of their vehicles parked. So they're doing like a run around the car in a play game that they're also playing that same game in the house and other areas. But so that's the first one. And then just working up to being able to open and close the car door so that the dog is used to the sound of the car door opening and closing. And that's all during game time and excitement, and using food rewards as well. But so slowly getting the dog used to it. And then she is also working on hand targets. So instead of like trying to get the dog to target the car right away, she's just getting hand targets near the car, when they're in the driveway, and slowly getting closer to the car. And then she'll slowly work on getting hand targets with just the hand inside the car, so the dog not needing to climb in the car yet, just doing the hand targets, and slowly building that up to where she's sitting in the car with the dog, doors open, nothing running, just sitting there, slowly building up to closing the doors, slowly building up to starting the car. And, you may need to add in some different steps if any one step you tend to get stuck on, or the dog is having more issues. That's where it becomes that individual plan. If you're stuck in one place and you can't go, you likely made a step that's too big. So you need to back up to some place where they were successful and think of a smaller step up. So that's kind of general desensitization plan, but that's a good way to start with in the car. The same also works for overexcitement. However, when it's overexcitement, we tend to maybe focus on those types of things before we get out of the car. because that's usually where the overexcitement comes. You know, our dog may be really excited to get in the car, but unless they're having issues while we're driving wherever, we usually don't focus a whole lot on that. Now, if they're doing a lot of whining and pacing as we drive nonstop, then yeah, we may want to back it up and do some of the games in the driveway. But they tend to learn really quickly where we're going when we go to the same place regularly. And so they'll get overexcited as we approach that destination. And then that's where we look at car games on the other end. So it's when you're exiting the car, and you might do your simple cues and things before you get out. So you're building up the dogs, not just getting to that new exciting environment, the playground or dog park or walking trail or wherever it is you're taking your dog. They're not building up excitement just to get out and engage with the environment. You're getting them to engage with you before you let them out. And so it's kind of a opposite of when you're dealing with the anxiety and fear. It's the same kind of situation, just in reverse.
Penny, let me add one thing to the anxiety and getting in and out in the car and situated and with the car. It ideally we want to try. We want our dogs in a secure, enclosed, preferably crash tested crate while we're driving. Not everybody can do it. Not everybody has the means to afford a crate like that or the ability to fit one in their car. But changing the environment, if you've got a dog that's fearful, that's riding in the car, changing the situation in the car can also help. So if you're using a crate and you can change the crate, you can change the crate pad, you can put change the pad that the dog is riding on in the back seat. When Nick was little and was using a seatbelt, he didn't like getting into my boyfriend's truck, and he would get into other vehicles, but he didn't like getting into my boyfriend's truck. And so I put the mat I was using for his placemat down where I wanted him to ride, and all of a sudden he just, oh, okay, no problem. That's where I'm supposed to be. So sometimes you might need to just giving them that little piece of security of something that, okay, I know I'm supposed to be on this piece, this piece of bath mat. So that's my secure spot. So I'll get on that and then I can get buckled in. Or I know I'm supposed to be in the crate and that's where I'm supposed to feel secure. So that's where I'm strapped in.
It's a great idea to use those resources that you're already working with.
Right.
If your dog is fearful of the crate at home, you probably don't want to just put them in a crate in the car right away. You have to build up to that.
No, but that's definitely something that you should be considering building up to, because especially those of us with service dogs, we transport them a lot and we want to do everything we can to keep them secure. And then also keep in mind, one of the things, I was very fearful of taking Nick on public transportation, which is my main source of getting around, for a very long time, because he was car sick and it took him over a year to get over being car sick. But again, it's about giving them the opportunity to work through it. And now he's fine.
Yeah. So that's where I say every dog is going to be individual, and you may be able to work through it in, a couple of weeks. It may take a couple of months. It all depends on the dog. So I do want to say that, typically it's the anxiety or fear base that tend to take longer to work through versus overexcitement. And that could be just the fact that it takes longer to change those emotions to make them have different emotions instead of being fearful. But we also tend to let the overexcitement slide. For example, Cam, my senior boy, has trouble with anxiety in general. And so if he's having a day where he's more anxious, or maybe it's a day where it kind of feels like a thunderstorm, it might be coming, even though it's not really here yet, and that's one of the things that triggers him, then he's more likely to whine in the car and pace back and forth. And so I noticed early on that if I could make sure he was super comfortable in a place to lay down, that he wouldn't whine. If he was standing up or sitting, then he would whine. And that was a little bit of his anxiety by his nature, but it was also a little bit of overexcitement for where we were going. And when he was laying down, he wasn't paying attention to where we were going. He was more focused on, oh yes, mom said lay down, I'm going to lay down, I'm going to look at her and wait for what's next. And so even just that kind of guidance helped him a lot. For Azul, he's pretty much been in the car since he was a puppy, and he did have that short bout of motion sickness a couple of times when he was really little, but he loved the car so much it was easy to change for him. So it's just kind of a matter of every little dog is different. I am just curious. I know we have a super small group here tonight, and a lot of our regulars couldn't make it. I'm wondering, is there any other, like I know Cindy, you mentioned public transportation. Is there any tips or tricks that you found helpful to get him over, the hiccups for public transportation as far as motion sickness with public transportation?
I made sure he was really comfortable with riding in the car. One of the factors with my boyfriend's truck is it's a diesel truck. And so that tends to have the engine sounds different and it vibrates differently than a gas engine. And I think that was part of the issue. I spent quite a bit of time working on just getting Nick comfortable going in and out of the truck. And Poe has never had an issue. She's just like, oh, we get to go someplace? Cool. And so she just jumps in the truck with no issue. But Nick, one of the things that I found that was helpful with getting him comfortable in the truck was putting down his placemat and having him go on that, and having him sit on that, and that made a big difference. And then when I started, I guess it was last July, I was taking him up to Seattle, or not to Seattle, to Portland to go see a trainer. And so I had to fly with him. And what I did with him for that was I took him on the bus, and we rode 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 specifically between seats. So he had to sit between seats, and I had him sit backwards under the seat between my legs, so he would be comfortable with that. And now he pretty much he knows when he gets on the bus that he's going to get on the bus and he's going to sit where he's supposed to sit between my feet, and he's going to stay there until we get off.
So, Samadra, do you have any other issues with transportation that you're struggling with that you want to share tonight that we can maybe help you through?
Well, we've tried to catch the bus once. It wasn't good. I think it was just a noise, but she gets car sick. But she's only been in the car 3 times. And I'm going to try what you said, because the first time she was in the car, when I got her, of course, and then we went to get her shots, and I can't remember what the third time was, but she gets car sick like really, really bad. So,
and how old?
She's 4 months. She'll be 4 months on the 13th.
Yeah, that seems to be the very, very common age. It's right in between 3 to 4 months old. And I don't know if it's that something is changing digestive wise, or one thing that I've found that really helps, especially for puppies at that age, is So a lot of times if we're going out and about, we're either prone to not feeding them at all because we want to be able to use their kibble as treats when we get wherever we're going, or we're prone to, we don't want to take kibble with us, so we feed them their full meal before we go. I've found that especially during that age, if we can get them to eat a half a meal, or like for my dogs, I don't use regular, just plain milk bones very often, but there's something about the milk bone biscuit itself. And then there's like a peanut butter version. So think like the cheaper, not healthy in any way biscuit. There's
Or
something,
ginger snaps.
yeah, there's something about those that absorb stomach acid. So during Azul's early time when he was, the puppy, 4 months old and struggling, if he ate one milk bone just before going in the car, that was enough to get him to wherever we were going. And he usually got a second milk bone before we got out of the car where we were going. And that pretty much solved the issue for him. Then a few months later, he was probably more like 8 months old. He started having almost like a morning sickness issue. It was very similar to the motion sickness from the car. And it was basically caused by he was eating his dinner too early the night before. So he was going too long between his evening meal and the morning. His stomach was too empty when he woke up in the morning. So then he didn't want kibble because his stomach was upset because it was filled with phlegm instead of food. But the milk bone helped get him past that as well, because it just helped absorb that stomach acid enough that allowed him to then be able to eat his kibble, 5 minutes later. It got the stomach started.
And dogs can have ginger snaps, and ginger is a natural antiemetic. It helps with nausea. So that can be something that can be helpful with preventing car sickness.
Yeah, you do just have to be careful with
You just
ginger snaps based on like the size of your dog, because too much
Right.
ginger can be a bad thing. But
Well, too much
one
anything
or
can-
two ginger snaps are not going to hurt even a small dog, as long as you're not like giving them tons and tons and tons all at the same time. You should be fine.
And if it's happening every time and it's not getting better, it's worth talking to the vet about
Definitely.
what you can give, and if there's something inexpensive over the counter that you can give. I know Nick took Benadryl for quite a while he was a puppy, before we went to our weekly class. And he was a difficult puppy because we weren't going anywhere, so I couldn't just take him out on a regular basis because we were on lockdown.
COVID
Right.
puppy.
He's a COVID. I got him 2 weeks before my state went on full lockdown, and we had shelter in place, and you weren't even supposed to be going out to go pick up dinner to get dinner at the, drive-through.
Right.
So you can get them over this. It just sometimes takes a little bit of creativity. The other thing is, as they get older, you want to give them incentive to ride in the vehicle. So you want to take them fun places. You want to take them hiking. You want to take them to the park. You want to take them someplace where they're going to be played with, where it's about them, so that the car doesn't necessarily mean every trip is to the vet, or the bus doesn't mean every trip is to the vet.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll start driving her to the park. It's only like 2 blocks, but if we can drive there instead of walking.
But yeah, and it may seem silly, but that little 2 blocks, that's going to build up for, the next time you have to do a 4-hour road trip.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the common things, we think we put our puppy in the car to bring them home for day one. That's usually traumatic in itself. We just took them away from their people. And then a lot of times we don't take them anywhere else until we take them to the vet, which again is being handled, sometimes getting shot, sometimes by people they don't know. So it's another scary event. And then we may take them out once or twice between the first visit and the second vet visit that usually happen, relatively quickly, but they don't necessarily learn to enjoy it yet at that point. So the more we can do, like even the short trip, even if you put them in the car, once you get them up to that point and they're comfortable, just putting them in the car and driving around the block and coming home and getting out of the car can be fun. And then you can put them in the car and drive to that park 2 blocks away, even if you're not getting out. I mean, if you're getting out and sniffing, that's great. But if you're not getting out and you're just sitting there in the car and listening to kids playing on the playground and watching dogs walk by, that's especially what I will advise people to do if their dogs haven't had all their shots yet, because that park may not be safe for the dog to be walking around if they're not fully vaccinated. But so those short little drives can really help to make it exciting and wonderful for the
Or
dog.
you can go to the strip mall and park and experience all the people going in and out of the store without actually going in the store, and the car doors, and you'll have people coming up wanting to talk to pat your puppy, which you can control how much interaction they get with your puppy if your puppy's getting
Because you could
overwhelmed.
roll windows up.
Yeah, exactly. And roll windows up, drive away.
The other thing I do with young puppies as far as like vehicle socialization is, people don't think of all the sounds and smells of a drive-through, but you got drive-throughs for fast food, you got drive-throughs for banks. There's a lot of little things. There's even some drive-through pharmacies where, unless you have to drive a long ways to get to them, it's typically a short drive there. They're in the car to accomplish a goal that you're probably struggling with a little bit to do because you don't want to leave puppy home, when they're young enough. But so that type of car socialization where they're seeing other people, hearing other people, smells, sights, sounds. I mean, we don't really think about how much we actually tone out when we sit, like say in a McDonald's drive-through line. We don't think about everything around there, but sometimes there's dogs barking, there's other cars, there's cars passing us. A lot of times they're partnered with a gas station, so you have those smells. There's just a lot of
depending on the
different things.
weather, sitting outside at a restaurant, even when they're a little older than 4 months, but that's good for practicing place training and being around other people and different situations. And it's amazing how quickly they learn and how quickly their little brains learn and absorb all that.
Yeah.
And
I always say all socialization starts at home and then in the car. And then from there, you can branch out to whatever small environments you have around you where you can do it, in small chunks. But everything starts at home and in the car. If you have a car. If you don't have a car and you're relying on public transportation, or, I know a lot of my clients have issues with seizures or something where they can't drive. So then they're relying on friends and family cars. And, so there are other things that make cars more challenging to practice in, but you want to at least get a couple in the early months if you're working on puppy socialization stuff, because it will make a huge difference.
And if you have a cute little puppy, people are, oh, we get to take the puppy, because for whatever reason, people like taking puppies places.
Right. Because I need her to like not be car sick, because before, when I had my other service dog, and what I have a tendency to do is I might pack up tomorrow and be like, oh, I'm going to go on a trip, and I might drive across the country. So
right.
Yeah. My pack up tomorrow trip is usually only about 6 hours, but I still could do that at a moment's notice pretty much any time.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, you should be able to pack up and go someplace overnight, or 6 hours or 12 hours and not have it be a big deal. But it just sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes if most of the car trips are places like the vet, that's going to make them more anxious to go.
Right.
The other way to curb that is, one thing I did with my older dog, Poe, is when she did her puppy classes at PetSmart, and they had a band field in that PetSmart. So every time we went to puppy class, this was before COVID, you can tell pre-COVID, COVID, and post-COVID puppies. I would take her over to the clinic and ask them to take her in the back and have them love on her. And they would take her in the back and give her pats and cookies. And she loves to go to the vet. That's her thing, because she associates going to the vet with cookies and love. And Nick, not so much, because he just hasn't had the same level of exposure, not because he hasn't been in the waiting room area. He's been there every time we go to class, which is twice a week, but he's just not comfortable going in the back because he's not had the same loving. He's gone in the back and he gets shots, and the knots.
Azul's the same way. He came to me maybe 30 days after COVID started. So he didn't get the early vet socialization that I would normally do. I've been called the crazy dog mom that goes and hangs out every day for like 3 or 4 days before my appointment in the lobby to help get my dog used to it. But since he didn't get that because the lobby wasn't open the whole first year of his life, and he had to go into the building without me for those early visits, we didn't do all the extra visits. So that's his biggest struggle, is going anywhere out in public without me, which we've really worked a lot on over the last year, not just with the vet. But so that is always one of my recommendations, is don't make every car trip to the vet, and don't make every trip to the vet a time where you're getting shots.
And then also be able to go to the bathroom without your service dog. Not that you can't take your service dog with you, but there's times when it's just a good way to practice. If you have somebody with you, that you trust, it's a good way to practice for that separation. So if you do a CGC test, you can get that 3 minutes by going in the bathroom, practicing by going into the bathroom, and then they get used to, oh, okay, somebody just disappeared, and I'm going, it's going to be okay.
Topic too.
Yeah.
That might be another chat on another night. But no, I totally agree. I actually, being a trainer and working with clients locally that have service dogs, we make sure to trade dogs every now and then, just to give us that opportunity to have somebody else take your dog away from you and practice that and have them still maintain manners. So we do that quite regularly. That has nothing to do with transportation troubles, though.
No, but it's also a good idea to have your dog so you can leave it in the car. Now, like in the state of California, and I think in the state of Arizona, they pretty much make it illegal to leave your dog in your vehicle. But if you go to a dog show, everybody's dog is in their vehicle because that's where the crates are, and nobody wants to unload all the crates. But you also see crate fans on every crate. So everybody's got there's all these Ryobi fans hooked up, blowing on the dogs. The dogs are in there going, oh, this feels so good. But being able to leave the dog in the crate in the car with the car running is a reasonable thing. Like if you're pumping gas, if all you're doing is pumping gas and you step around the back end of your car, you don't want to come back inside the car and find the car torn up. And so being able to, like,
we definitely practice gas stations. Thankfully, I'm in a cooler climate where I don't leave my car running. I just roll my window down enough to where, like, I can touch my dog, but not so far that they could jump out until they're trained well enough. Now I can leave my door wide open while Azul's in the car. But,
I haven't
that
trained
ability to build up to it so that they're used to it. Even if you have to run in and pay, and because you're just running in to pay for gas, you don't want to take the time to unload them, they should be comfortable in holding it in the car for that 4 minutes or
My
however
last
long it takes.
Pyrenees would stay in the back seat of the car. And I could leave all 4 windows down on that car, and she'd just be laying there. And on more than one occasion, I had gone grocery shopping, and I went to open the trunk of the car. It was like a hatchback that looked like a trunk, and I'd go and open the trunk of the car, and the bag boy would be with me. And as I popped the trunk open, she'd pop her head up on the back seat, the back of the seat on the back seat, and she just put her big head there. And I get these looks like Falcor,
Right. Great
kind of like
Pyrenees.
this, taken aback, like this huge dog is back there not doing anything. But it is something, it's part of car training, is to be able to leave them in the car without them freaking out. And I think especially
depending on climate and safety, and
right,
you have to do whatever is called for based on your climate and your area, and everybody's comfortableness of how long they do that is going to be different. But yeah, because Azul has been a COVID puppy, and because like all grocery stores went to offering the outdoor pickup, Azul has been used to somebody opening the back of our car and putting groceries in since he was just an itty bitty baby. So if he even pops up and looks at them, is hit or miss, because a lot of times he will greet them at the window if they come to walk to the window to say hi. But other than that, he pretty much just ignores them, as it's commonplace. It's just what we do when we're in this environment. So that's something I've actually had to work on with a lot of older dogs and service dogs that were not born into COVID, like Azul has grown up naturally, but older dogs that were used to life pre-COVID have had to learn how to have strangers approach their car while they were in the car with their person without being protective of that car. And they've had to learn, how to walk past people that were wearing masks, and so many different things based on that. But the car is a big kicker that people just didn't think about.
Now, you didn't have this issue, Penny, because you're in a different area than I am, but in California, Nick didn't see a person without a mask after he was 3 months old, until he was, other than me and my boyfriend, until he was close to a year old. And because everybody was walking around even outside with masks on.
Yeah, we had that indoors, but not outdoors.
Well,
so Azul did greet a lot of people outdoors without masks. But
I live in California, and I didn't wear a mask outside, but there were a lot of people that did.
right.
And but it's different because he had to get used to different faces. He
Right.
didn't see his primary local trainer until he was over a year old without a mask on.
I know it's kind of funny to think we're always going to be comparing now, pre-COVID, post-COVID. But if you think about it, the way that we trained dogs pre-COVID and the way that we do it now is so drastically different. Like, nobody would have thought of holding Zoom meetings like this pre-COVID. All classes were in person, but we had to learn a different way to do it. Yeah. And now we're finding out that Zooms are actually more beneficial to more people. For one, you take away the equation of people are so focused on their dog at the moment that they can't concentrate on whatever the teacher is saying, because a lot of times the dogs are a lot more calm when it comes to a Zoom meeting versus when you're standing inside a group class of 10 other dogs that are all excited to be there.
I'll disagree. I'm throwing kibble at one of my dogs.
Yeah, but it's not the fact that you're on a Zoom that's causing you to do that. Usually.
I mean,
sometimes Poe will ask for it, but But usually it's what else is going on in your environment is,
Yeah.
you know, the bangs and the things from your neighbor being in the more urban environment that causes that. Whereas, I mean, even you guys saw the beginning of the call, Azul was being a little bit pesky, which is a new behavior for him for Zooms, because he's been so used to me doing Zooms that normally he just chills at my feet or lays down behind me. And I honestly think his protest is my office is a little bit warmer than what he's used to, and he doesn't like the heat. But so he got into an old snuffle box and dug out the last 2 or 3 pieces of kibble he missed the last time. I didn't mind that much so much. And then he completely ripped up the snuffle box afterwards. So now I have shredded cardboard on the bed behind me. And then I still don't know where this came from. And I don't know if it'll show up enough, but he found this candy cane box and brought this to me to trade it for a treat. So he was like saying, can I rip this up or will you give me something better for not doing it? I kind of do know where he got it. I just don't know how he found it. But like one room over is our like attic storage room. So there's Christmas decorations and whatnot in there. So I'm sure it was in there, although I don't remember putting it in there. Don't know. He had to have found it there because it wouldn't be anywhere else up here. Sure haven't had a box of candy canes laying around for.
It's July. It's Christmas in July.
Right. And, you know, there have been years where I've had candy canes around this long, but I'm sure this was just the empty box that got stuffed with the Christmas decorations that never got taken care of. But he found it.
Let's tie our Zoom into what we're talking about tonight. One of the advantages of Zoom is if you do have a puppy that gets very car sick and you're working on the car sick issue and you're working on it with the vet, while you're doing that, you can still meet with a trainer to work on what you need to work on for puppy issues. And
Right.
So there's a lot of advantages to being able to Zoom. And
then we also have this video that's available for everyone else who couldn't be here tonight to be able to watch it.
exactly.
So,
And then it gives us a chance if you're working on place training, like I'm constantly working on place training, just something I do. They're on their bed, I throw kibble. That's kind of the rule here, and one piece at a time. And so, you know, I get to work on that during a Zoom meeting.
right. So I think we covered the transportation issues that are here. For those watching the replay of this video, if you have more issues, you're welcome to leave a comment on the YouTube channel that this will be posted on. And then we can base that on future talks if there's other transportation challenges out there. I know from previous things we've talked about, you know, more of a public transportation issues, which we can tie in. That will be another full night itself. So that could be on our list. If you are not familiar because you are watching this from one of the many other groups that we put links into it, we do have a working pause group. So I'll put the link in the video. I can put it in chat if you want it, Sumatra. But so the working pause is where this is actually directed out of. And there we put the Zoom link there first. If we're trying to decide between 2 or 3 topics, we post them there. Right now we have a poll going with 9 possible topics. So you can vote for your favorites and the ones that you want if you join the working pause group. You by all means do not have to join that group to participate in the Zooms, but if you're interested, it's open and it's a free group to just participate. It's good for all service dogs, working dogs of any sort. So therapy dogs, search and rescue dogs, even hunting dogs. Our goal is any dogs with advanced training for that group. So that's where we kind of run the chats out of. So I think we are just about set for tonight, unless anybody else has anything else they want to add real quickly.